Hello, Grace City. We are just a few days away from our annual week of prayer, fasting, and consecration with our global church family. I wanted to ask you if you have thought about how you are going to fast next week. Biblical fasting is the intentional refraining from food for a spiritual purpose. The goal is to enter into deeper communion with God in our withdrawal from food. I love what Pastor John Tyson says in his book, Beautiful Resistance. He says, fasting is designed to shift our focus from our bodies to our spirits and from our flesh to our Father. There are a couple different forms of fasting we see in the Bible that we would recommend for a kind of modern day. The first is what theologians have called the normal fast, pretty easy, where food is given up for an extended amount of time, but liquids are still consumed. This is probably the most common form of fasting and the one you think of when you hear the word. The second form of fasting is a partial fast, where one refrains from certain categories of food or specific meals. In this model, one is still receiving sustenance, but rejecting food that brings joy. You might see an example of this in Daniel chapter 10. That begs the question that you might be asking, which should I choose? First, you should consider your lifestyle. Although fasting for short periods of time is generally considered safe, you should consider any medical conditions that you have before fasting. Also consider your workload and remember that fasting from food will result in less physical energy. And second, whether you choose a normal or partial fast, the most important part is that you commit to it. Normal and partial fasts are both biblical and effective means leaning closer into God and seeing breakthrough in your life, in our church, and in our city. A couple other important biblical notes on prayer and fasting. First, the biblical instruction for fasting is particularly concerned with abstaining from food. This is not to say that it's wrong or inappropriate to choose to fast from social media, TV, or other outlets. Those are all great things to include in your fasting. But the Bible is particularly concerned with the role that food often plays in our life as a source of comfort or fulfillment. During the week of prayer and fasting, we get to direct our attention from physical needs and let it stir us towards spiritual purposes. So even if you can't do a normal fast for the full week, consider adapting your diet for a partial fast, choosing to abstain from certain meals or from specific foods for the course of the week. And second, I want to encourage you not to make a big deal of your fasting choice to others. Jesus said in Matthew 6:16-18, "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." While I would encourage you to share how you are fasting with a friend or a spouse for accountability, we should avoid the temptation to be mopey or despondent when you show up to prayer gatherings or when you're chatting with a friend. This is about closeness with your Father, not about making it known to others by your attitude or your actions. Now, I might not have answered all of your questions about fasting in this video, but hopefully we've got your mind thinking about how fasting might look like for you next week. If you still have questions or would like to continue the conversation, reach out to a leader in our church, DM our social media account here, or send an email to hello@gracecityeugene.com. As we approach our week of prayer, fasting, and consecration, you can find all our resources like prayer gathering schedules, prayer and fasting guides, and even more on our website, gracecityeugene.com/fasting.